I invite you, all of you, to today's marketing class, and today we are going to discuss on creating brand equity. Let's look into this. Before going into discussing this brand equity, let's have a recap of previous classes. Let's start with brand, and the definition goes like this: it's a name, term, sign, symbol, design, or a combination of them. The purpose is that to identify the goods and services of one seller differently from other products of their competitors. This is what the purpose of the brand is. And I want to tell you that brand is so important. To make you understand the importance of the brand, there are three sentences. Just let's go through that. A product is something made in the factory, but a brand is something which resides in the minds of the customers. And product can be physically produced, but brand is not something which can be physically produced, and it's very difficult. And this is dealing with the minds of the customers. Brand is something related to the minds of the customers, and product can be copied by others, but a brand will never have uh, will not be copied, and it will have a legal protection. So this is the policy. The product, after some time, it can be copied by your competitors, but a brand remains as it is. A product can be outdated, and once a product is released into the market, and after some time, that may not be a preferred one by the customers in the market. New products will take its place, but a brand stands forever. Some other new products also can be released under the brand. This is my intention is to make you understand that the brand is very important thing. Now, these things which we have already discussed, the role of a brand for consumers, how this brand is going to be useful for the consumers, you can just see all the things, and how this is going to be useful for the manufacturers. And with this limited recap, we are getting into brand equity. So, brand equity, I'll tell you. See, just let's go to the first sentence. Brand equity is the added value that is endowed to products and services. This is this simply. A brand equity is the added value that is endowed to the products and services of a company. It is that it's a beautiful story. Once again, let's look back. Generally, a new product will come into the market after a pure, strict or stringent market research. In the market research, we record all the unsatisfied needs of the customers or their future expectations of the future product, and we will take them down, and we make a product which reflects their unsatisfied needs. But a product will never be released into the market just like that without any brand. But we fix a brand for that, and companies generally play so many tactics to make the brand very famous in the market, but not the products. So the brand will be made popular in the markets, and that will be fixed to the product, and product will be released. Before releasing the product with a brand, and the brand is to be properly positioned. And here, this also we have already discussed. Positioning is something, dealing with the minds of the customers. We shape the minds of the customers, and we take control of the minds of the customers and create a beautiful and different image for our brand from the customers uh, products belonging to some different brands. This is this I mean to say, whenever a brand is properly positioned, that really will have some advantage over the competitive products. And here you just look back again, how a product will be called as successfully positioned. And here, we have to dig back deep into that, into the previous classes, but not required. Probably you can recollect what is POP and PODs, and you have to identify the POPs of your products, and you have to identify and show to the customers and embed in the product several PODs or some PODs, and you have to stress in the positioning process on your PODs, and through which you are going to make some promises to the customers. And this way, a beautifully designed story which is going to provide the customers a superior quality which they cannot expect from any of the existing brands in the market. Whenever this is done, you can say that your brand has been successfully positioned. When a brand is successfully positioned this way, that will have an added value to the company. I mean to say, a product which is just like that, with a normal brand which has been thrown into the market, and it is different, and its business is different from a product which is having a lot kind of beautiful brand equity in the market, strong brand equity in the market. A brand with higher brand equity obviously makes more business. It's not, I want to make you understand that it's not something related to only profits. Brand equity is something related to some other superior value that really brings to the company. What that superior value that brings to the company, we are going to discuss now. This value may be reflected in the form of consumers. See, how it is reflected, that additional value, how it is going to be reflected. Here you just always think from the angle of the customers. This is a kind of perceptual game or perceptual process which is taking place in the minds of the customers. But the driving force behind are the directors of this perceptual process are nothing but the marketers again. This value may be reflected in how consumers think, feel, and act with respect to the brand. See, these are all the perceptual elements, which are, I mean to say, these are all the things which are very much intangible in nature. And this kind of brand equity certainly adds value to the company and the products, and gives benefits to the company. Superior, maybe anything, plus advantage will be there for the company with this kind of brand equity. But how it is created? It is created with the consumer's thinking process. See this, they think first about your brand, and they feel after that. These are all superior concentration, like superior degree, like the degree of effect is going to increase one by one after the other element. They think first about your brand, and they feel for afterwards, and they act upon. They feel they feel they'll acting here means whether they are going to accept your product, or whether they are going to reject your product in respect of your brand. This is what it is. This is why I said, like, when we say, like, okay, your the consumers really thought about your product, they really felt about your product, and they really acted about your product and your brand. And how you are going to measure this brand equity. But of course, with these three what I say, like, intangible elements, we cannot measure the brand equity. But there is a method where we see the impact in the books of records in the form of prices, market share, profitability that a brand commands for the firm. This is what it is. Brand equity is something, adding value to the products and services of a company. This is done by the customers feeling process, and finally they act upon your brand. And this will be reflected in the form of the prices, maybe the premium prices, or the market share, or the profitability in any of kinds like this. And this will be the added value for the company. And brand equity is an important intangible asset that has psychological and financial value to the firm. And this is what I said, like, brand equity is something, something related to the perceptual process of the customer. And finally, the reflection of this perceptual process will be in the form of any of these things. Prices, like, premium prices, there may be a huge market share for a product, and there may be a huge profitability for a product. Maybe the profitability for a momentary time, and afterwards it won't be there. This depends upon your objective of your company, and whether it can be market share, it can be profitability, it can be premium prices, it can be like expansion chances, future expansion chances for your company, or diversification chances for your company. So several advantages will be there with this brand equity. Okay, there are several approaches generally marketers adapt to understand what brand equity and of its studying their nature. But generally, as we said, whether you develop a product or service, market research or brand or positioning, whatever you do, brand equity, all these things are just related to a customer. So, but customer is the hub. Our customer centric activities are all these things. So, in marketing, whatever you do, that is going to finally to be reflected at the point of customer. So, customer based approach of brand equity is going to be a little bit meaningful than the rest of the approaches. This is the brand viewed from the perspective of the customer and individual or organization. See, it is to say, like, we said, like, a customer is the prime person, and the customer is the central person, where this brand equity, whatever it is going to reflect in the form of shares or prices or profits or future expansion facilities or possibilities, whatever it is. And we say, like, this is the customer is the important person. The power of the brand lies in what customers have seen, read, heard, learned, thought about your product over time. So Generally brand equity is something, when so many people are preferring your product, product will be having so much of brand equity. And this happens with one's own experiences, or with they may be seeing somebody, or they may be reading something, and they may be hearing, when some beautiful story is told about your brand by somebody else, and finally they will be learning something. Or sometimes they may be out of all these things, culminating and making them to react towards your product, and finally they may be buying your product, and they may be having first hand experience. And brand is said to have positive. So this brand equity, after this perceptual process, finally it is going to depend on the reaction of the customer. Based on the reaction of the customers, it can be positive or it can be negative. If he prefers your brand, it's going to have customer positive customer brand equity. And if it's not going to prefer your product, and it's going to understood as, your product has negative customer brand equity. And to understand simply, like Acre's model is going to help you how this brand equity, what is the internal structure, how it is, and what are the basic elements that are required to be concentrated in the building process of brand equity, or what are the driving forces, or uh, the basic pillars of brand equity. All these things, we can understand with this simple model given by Acre. There are a set of 5 categories of brand assets and liabilities which add value to the brand. But here, Acre has given 5 brand pillars, or driving forces, or drivers, or whatever it is. But they are going to have, they can act both as assets and liabilities. If you are so effective at all these 5 points, it's going to be an asset for you, your company. Or when you are going to be poor at any one point or all of these points, is going to be a liability for you in the brand equity development process. And let's try to understand the first pillar being, first driver or driving force or driver or important thing being brand loyalty. So brand equity, brand loyalty, like loyalty, basically we know the meaning of it. When a customer repeatedly prefers a particular brand, we say that he's a brand loyal. And the more number of brand loyal customers are there, and the company is going to occupy a good share in the market. And not only it's occupying the good share, it's going to add something to the brand equity. How it is, let's try to understand. When a why and when a person becomes a brand loyal, when a person has uh, good or positive brand experience, and a good experience about the performance of the product, he turns to be the loyal customer. When a person turns to be a loyal customer for a product, and we know, and it's an accepted principle, that no person in the world can tell a beautiful story about the performance of a brand than a brand loyal customer. Imagine if there are more number of loyal customers for your brand, and it's gonna be huge brand equity going to be created for your product in the market. So this, what it is, that brand loyalty is to be considered as one of the drivers of brand equity. And brand awareness is something, the customers, whenever they think of a product, or think of a category, or a product belonging to a category, or whenever they think of a particular utility in the market, or use in the market, or need in the market, they immediately should be able to recall the name of your brand. This is quite, that is called brand awareness. This comes naturally in the minds of the customers when they see the differentiation in your product than from your competing products. When there are, outspoken, like very clear or visible differences in your brand from your customer products, generally this follows along with the, the brand image of your company, brand. And finally that culminates or translates into brand awareness. When brand awareness is, there are so many products in the market without brand awareness. They may be doing, some poor business, or maybe developing, or producing some ordinary profits in the market. But a product, but a brand with a, you know with a good huge brand awareness, followed by a differentiation in the product or the brand, is going to be a huge success for the company. And perceived quality, this also is to be considered as an important factor. whenever a person, generally when you are positioning your product, you tell so much story about your product, and the customer believes all these things. In the storytelling process, you may be making so many promises to the customers in the form of PODs. When you keep up all your promises, or when you make evident to the customer as true all your PODs are in the product, and generally the person buys your product more and more. When a person listens to your positioning process, he may get attracted, and he will have a kind of expectation before about your product or brand before buying. And once he buys the product, and he gets a kind of perception about your product, about your brand's quality. If his perception is more than what he expected about your brand, then he becomes a loyal customer. We know the impact of the loyal customers in the brand equity building process. So it is that perceived quality is to be all the times given more priority, and that should be kept in mind. And what all the promises that we have made in the positioning process should be made as true. It should be practically implemented, otherwise gonna be failed. And next, brand associations. Though there are all this kind of brand loyalty or awareness and perceived quality, all these things maybe coming out of the real qualities or superior utility that your product is going to provide to the customers. But though all these things are there, if your brand doesn't have good brand associations, it's gonna be a little difficult task to make build up the brand equity in the for your brand. Is that the best example? This identifying this kind of thing. Generally the big MNCs, they'll never go back in hiring big celebrities or icons or big events to make as their brand associations, to make the customers easily attracted and make the customers to feel associated with the product. Best example for this is like we have so many times discussed in marketing class in the college, is that Hema Malini has been brand ambassador, and Hema Malini has been associated with Kent RO, like the way that the dress, the color of the dress Hema Malini wears while he's there, holding the RO in the picture, and the water, the color of the water, and Hema Malini's presence there is going to have huge impact in the customer association. And other proprietary assets, like after all these things, though all these things are there, and some other proprietary assets will really ignite the brand equity in the customers. It's that the assets like patents and intellectual property rights, relations with the trade partners, and the more proprietary rights a brand has accumulated, the greater the brand competitive edge in those fields. So given all this, given priority to all the five elements as we have discussed over here, if successfully tailored, it's going to build up a huge brand equity. Else there are going to be liabilities for the company. And next, creating brand equity. How the brand equity can be created? It's all here we try to understand the internal or intrinsic elements which makes a brand equity a whole thing or a complete one. But here we are going to have a little discussion about how brand equity can be created. Define a positioning, and we know no need to discuss about this more and more. And whenever the product is going to whenever your brand is going to be launched into the market, you have to position it carefully. Unless and until it's properly positioned, it's not going to create culminate in brand equity. It is that in the positioning process, generally it's not easy thing. Like it's not thinking about the product, it's not thinking about uh, some other thing. It's the purely the subject matter of customer mind set, or the customer way of perception. So how he is going to perceive the things, and as per his likes and dislikes, and as per his attitudes and perceptions, we are going to tailor this positioning process. And unless and until this is the bedrock of brand equity creation process or tactic, unless and until it is clearly or carefully tailored positioning style is there, it's not going to result in building up of brand equity and tell a brand story. It's that we can take maybe probably you are just positioning your product in a beautiful way. You are going to catch the perception of catch the mind of the customers, but better if this positioning is added with a little beautiful story about your brand. Is going to have lasting impact. Is that I want to discuss with you here a brand colors Aish soap. See, Aish soap, that that's an herbal soap in India, and in the market, in Indian market, there are so many herbal soaps. But see the internal picture that they show in the advertisement, like why they started, why they got an idea about why they got an idea about bringing an herbal soap into the market where there are so many other soaps are there. And this way, they speak so much about ayurvedic herbals and vedas and so many other things, bring it to life. It's that a story. Take an example of the Aish again, and they say that they wanted how they got an idea of making that Aish soap, and they say that they have referred the tips and tricks of so many sages some thousands of years ago, and they considered their teachings, and they extracted some elements of some herbs available in Indian continent, and they as per their the olden techniques or traditional techniques, they brought a product, a real and genuine product into the market. And they say, even they claim that there are so many brands in the market which are in the saffron color and saying that they are the herbal. Simply saffron color will not make the product as herbal. But we are the people, they add so much to the product, they add so much story to the product. Like Aish purifying turmeric soap is formulated with 5,000 years of Ayurvedic wisdom to give you clear and glowing skin, something like that. They have shown a picture, they have shown a video, like where they are collecting so many herbs, and some sages will be referring some books, golden books, and the grinding process, adding of the oils, and so many things. And this is a kind of story, like this is a kind of story which gives real life to the brand. It's a kind of effort made to leave a kind of lasting impression how a brand is really brought into the market. Build a brand before transaction. It's that uh, generally, our tendency is that after the positioning process has been done, and by listening or by being attracted with the positioning of a brand in the market, some people get attracted and comes to the stores and buy the product. Here, what the author wants to tell you is that, but when a customer comes to the store and buys a product, interacting with him and giving him something is different. Or before a customer enters the shop to buy a product, you just give him something, you just make something to make him understand what the product is. And this is a kind of brand building technique, brand equity building technique, where I say, like, we might have seen, during some festival occasions, crane beetle nut or some soaps manufacturing companies will send their samples of their products along with the newspapers to the to the readers. Like, it's a kind of effort which is making the customer to have a kind of impression on the brand before he gets into the store to buy the product, actually purchasing the product. Or some people, we might have seen, like, they'll be distributing some smaller pens or pencils with their brand's name. Is that it speaks something about the brand, like, make use each and every smaller occasion to make a kind of impression in the minds of the customers about your brand. Literally, practically, he gets into the store to buy a product. Oh, okay, this is that. And measures efforts. Once you do all these things, keep track of all your efforts of brand building, brand equity building process. Generally, this can be done once the product has been the brand has been released into the market. The final ultimate and exact thing is that we are going to meet all the customers, and we take the opinions of the customers on our brands. And this is quite expensive or quite time taking process. And nowadays, as the social media explosion is there, we generally we tend to get into so many blogs in the internet, and we just view, or we just trace out the views of different customers and different brands. This is also a kind of attempt to understand the opinion or the feedback of the customers of our product, okay, in the market. And this way, this is a small discussion which probably I think I made some effort to reach you, and we are going to end up this class, and in the next class we are going to meet with some other topic. Thank you.